Good morning, everyone. My name is Patria N. Ubusan, and I'm the last reporter of Group 12. Today, I'm going to talk about industrialization strategy approach to export policy. Since mid-1980s, another strand of thought has emerged concerning the relationship between trade and development. Industrialization strategy approach is an outward-oriented and optimistic about export-led, but still envisions government active role in influencing and sequencing export as a country strive to produce more advanced product adding a higher value. Rather than free market approach, it focuses on interventionist approach or how a government should play a big part towards exports, which can help accelerate growth and improve development outcomes. In the table, you can see the top 5 leading export-oriented East Asian economies. The number one spot is China, which has over $3 quadrillion, while in the top 5 is Singapore, which has over $400 trillion. It is actually revealed that at least 4 of these 5 leading export-oriented East Asian economies have in fact operate with very active government intervention to encourage industrialization export and to attempt to move up to the ladder of comparative advantage toward more advanced producing generating higher value added by employing higher skills and higher technology. Such program is what is termed as industrialization strategies or industrialization policy. When talking about industrial policy, what exactly does it mean? And why is it better to use this strategy in achieving development goals? Well, the answer is because industrial policy helps overcome market failure of original or any other alternative strategies. Industrial policy is the key to many of the challenges we collectively face today. Example is the Philippines. In the Philippines, we buy more from the world rather than selling, which causes trade deficit. We also need to consider the cut of carbon emission and to stop causing more pollution, which will result to catastrophic climate changes. These all problems stems from underlying structure of economy. So to define industrial policy again, industrial policy refers to the government efforts to shape the economy by targeting specific industries, firms, or economic activities. In other words, it is about using government policies to steer the economy in a way we want rather than just accepting where it is headed. You can't just leave things to chance and hope that everything's work out. You need to do something to make it work. So in industrial policy, this is achieved through a range of tools such as subsidies, tax incentives, infrastructure, development, protective regulation, and research and development support. So some of the examples of industrial policies is that in the US, there is a bipartisan support for the creating helpful incentive to produce Semiconductor and Science Act or CHIPS Act. This aims to revitalize the US semiconductor industry, and it is known that more than 90% of advanced chips crucial for defense and artificial intelligence came from Taiwan province of China, which raises concerns about US industry vulnerability in case of an attack. To address such risk, the US government is allocating $39 billion in funding from $280 billion CHIPS Act to support the development of advanced semiconductor manufacturing capability. The Biden administration industrial policy is far-reaching, and at least two semiconductor manufacturing clusters are planned by 2030. Funding recipients also face extensive conditions, such as a 10-year ban on expanding advanced chip capacity in China and a commitment of affordable childcare. These policies are part of Administrator Broder's approach to industrial policy, which also include $370 billion in subsidies for clean energy and Inflation Reduction Act. Another example is that in Japan, they provide subsidies worth $500 million to 57 companies to encourage them to invest domestically as part of their efforts to reduce their reliance on China. Because of globalization, the choices someone makes in China have a measurable and predictable impact elsewhere in the world, and that supply chains are interlinked and interdependent. So if something bad happens in China, all the countries they have trade relationship with will be affected. Japan's decisions to be self-reliant is a good course of action as part of their industrial policy. It was mentioned earlier how East Asian Tigers' on interventionist strategy toward exports can help accelerate growth and improve development outcomes. There was actually no general East Asian model. Each country have different model within a common context of export orientation, sound macro management, and good base of skills. Each model reflected different objective and uses different interventions. And as a result, each had different patterns of industrial and export growth, reliance on FDI, technological capability, and enterprise structure. Looking at the table, as you can see, Hong Kong was nearest to neoliberal ideal, combining free trade with an open door to policy to FDI. However, Singapore uses highly interventionist policies to promote and deepen industry, but in a free trade setting, showing clearly how industrial policy can take many other forms apart from import protection. With half the population of Hong Kong, even higher wages, and thriving service sector, Singapore did not suffer a similar hollowing out of manufacturing. Its industrial structure with strong policy to support deepened steadily over time, allowing it to sustain rapid industrial growth. It relied heavily on TNCs, but unlike Hong Kong, the government targeted activities for promotion and aggressively sought and used FDI as a tool to achieve its objective. While the two larger tigers, the Republic of Korea and Taiwan, province of China, adopted the most interventionist strategies, spanning product markets as well as all other markets factors. They had strong preference for promoting indigenous enterprises and for deepening local technological capabilities, and assigned FDI a secondary role to technology import in other forms. Their export drive was led by local firms backed by a host of policies that allowed them to develop impressive technological capabilities. The domestic market was not exposed to free trade. A range of quantitative and tariff measures were used over time to give infant industries space to develop their capabilities. The deleterious effect of protection were offset by strong incentive to export. Figure 7 shows MBA growth of 4 different countries: South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong, while Figure 8 shows the manufactured export growth of these 4 countries from 1980 to 2001. These both figures result of their different strategies. As you can see in figure 7, it shows Hong Kong weak performance while SK is the best performer. While in figure 8, you can see that it has a very similar pattern with figure 7, but the only difference is that in 1980s, Singapore outperforms South Korea in terms of export growth. So, seeing the effect of different industrialization policies, it shows how relevant government intervention is in growth and development of a country. And it will continue to be important in the design of developing countries' export strategies. So, what is South-South cooperation? So, South-South cooperation refers to technical cooperation among developing countries in the global south. It is a tool used by state, other international organizations, academics and societies, and the private sector to collaborate and share knowledge and skills and successful initiative in specific areas such as agricultural development, human rights, education, health, climate change, and etc. So, why operate under South-South trade? So, according to Banerjee argument, is that it is difficult for exporters from most low-income countries to break into developed markets, and it is very costly to create and maintain a reputation as a country that export high-quality products. Thus, it may be better for the developing country to trade with other developing economies. One strong variant of South-South trade hypothesis is that developing countries should go beyond greater trade with one another and move in the direction of economic integration. Economic integration occurs whenever a group of nations in the same region join together to form an economic union or regional trading bloc by raising common tariff wall against the product of non-member countries while freeing internal trade among members. When we say regional trade blocs, it is a collection of countries within geographical areas that band together to protect themselves from non-member groups. Levels of economic integration. First one is the free trade area. This is a form of economic integration in which free trade exists among members countries, but members are free to levy tariffs on non-member countries. It is simply the absence of any trade restriction. Government with free trade policies or agreements in place do not necessarily abandon all control of imports and exports or eliminate all protectionist policies. External tariffs against outside countries differs among members nations in free trade. Number two is the custom unions. In custom unions, nations that divide common external tariffs while freeing internal trade. Number three is common market. It encompasses all attributes of custom union, plus the free movement of labor and capital among the partner states. These three characteristics must be met to be considered market common. For example, suppose a production factor such as labor and capital cannot move freely between members countries. In that case, economic integration is still at the custom union stage. Members can freely trade all economic resources, not just tangible goods, in common market. So, both trade creation and trade diversion are effects of formation of custom union. Trade creation typically refers to a situation where the consumption of good or service shift from a more expensive domestic producer to a cheaper producer within the custom union. For example, let's assume there are two independent countries, Philippines and Japan, and that currently they do not enjoy free trade in coffee, for example. Japan uses tariffs to protect its inefficient, high-cost coffee growers, with the result that consumers in Japan pay a high price for their coffee. Coffee from Philippines is produced much more efficient at a lower cost and is of better quality. However, the tariff imposed by Japan raises the price of Philippine coffee so that Japan consumers are forced to consume cheaper domestic coffee. Now suppose that Japan and Philippines join a free trade area or custom union. Japan is forced to remove its tariff on Philippine coffee. As a result, Philippine coffee is now cheaper in Japan and consumers in Japan switch to the cheaper and better quality, which is the Philippine coffee. The effect is that consumers can benefit from consumer low-cost coffee, a process called trade creation. While in trade diversion, on the other hand, is where consumption of good or service shipped from cheaper foreign producer outside of the custom union to a more expensive producer within the custom union. This results in higher prices for consumers and increased difficulty in obtaining access to international goods that is cheaper.